Real conversations with real people that have chosen a life of positive impact in business, in community. This is Leave It Better with Brandon Trammell. Well, my first guest.
I'm your first?
You are my first guest.
Yes.
So welcome to Leave It Better.
Thank you.
I honestly could not think of another person that I would love to have on this show as my first guest, because I learned a lot from you, and you've taught me a lot, not only in our friendship, but professionally and on a more formal basis. I've learned a great deal from you, and so for me to be able to have you on the show and kind of share your journey with people was, it was an absolute no-brainer for me to have you as my first guest.
Thanp you.
Also, you have a little bit of experience behind the mic,
yeah,
you know.
A little bit.
I still do, but now I'll get new episodes coming soon. But listening to your show with Trudy LeBron, that's not how that works.
Yeah. And then I have According to Weeze,
yes,
a podcast on my own.
Yes. Solo show for you, right? Doing the solo act.
Yep.
And just to give folks maybe a little bit of context on where we met, we'll kind of unpack that a little bit. But I would love for you to just share why or what happened in your life, or maybe a set of events that really led to you being focused on having positive impact through your business, and why that became so important for you.
Yeah, so people have asked me this question since forever, because I've been doing this for so long, and I would say in the last year and a half, my answer has actually changed. So it used to be the very well, this happened and then this and I've come to the realization that I actually never had a choice. I think that I am one of the few people in this world that are very, very blessed to have figured out their path and purpose very early, and figured out where their magic meets the road, so to speak.
Yeah.
And of course, all of my life's experiences and, education and training and all of that led me to then be successful in business, because sometimes your magic sometimes doesn't work so great, right? Like
True
in
story.
a business,
True
so.
Story.
My magic isn't what makes me, a successful entrepreneur and business owner. That's a separate skill set. But in terms of what I do, in terms of equity, social impact, advocacy, social innovation, really kind of being a catalyst to change, I really think that I came out of the womb and the universe kind of said, all right, this is fundamentally who you are, And I think I say that I didn't have a choice because, as, again, very blessed, like my career has taken off, and, visibility has increased. Old teachers have come, because it's one thing when your parents tell you stories about your righteousness as a child, but kindergarten teachers, first grade teachers, sending me emails or DMs and saying, this doesn't surprise me by any means that this is what you're doing in this world, because I remember you staging a protest at 5 or 6, right? So, so I say all of that to say, I think it's the intersection of, one, growing up in the Bay Area, right? Berkeley, Oakland.
Sure.
We have obviously the Panthers and such a history of activism and revolution. So I think it's in our water, right? Parents that made sure very, very young that I understood a lot of things. One, the dynamics of, race and politics and all the intersections of different forms of marginalization, my own ancestry and history, imperialism and colonization. I was 7 having conversations, I'm I don't really fully understand it, but I was very young, exposed to those things.
Sure.
And also understanding, the impacts of colorism and, and then also the gift of education and oration and community building. So I was raised into it. This is fundamentally the fabric of who I am. And then a lot of life experiences, a lot of getting fired because I'm like, hi, capitalism is terrible. Could we do this differently? And people are like, no, you can't work here anymore.
No, move on.
Right. Led me to saying, okay, I think it's time that I do my own thing. Because I can't fundamentally want to be a catalyst for change and social innovation and equity. And a lot of people say, we need to burn down the system or dismantle it. I say that we need to reimagine what could be. Because we can't just burn things down. Like, we have to have infrastructure and systems, right, to replace it.
Yes.
And so I couldn't possibly do it with integrity and purpose at the intersection of corporate capitalism. So I left and I started my own thing.
Man, that story sounds eerily familiar to me.
Yeah.
Very, obviously distinctly different places that we operate. But feeling that tension for me was a major catalyst for change, right? And I think I share a lot of similarity in kind of your sense of, I basically came out of the womb doing this. Like, this was my thing from birth because, like, I always wanted to be a teacher. I knew I wanted to be a teacher. When I was in middle school, right? I wanted to be a teacher. And, a lot of disillusionment and a whole bunch of things happened that led me away from being an educator in a classroom, right? For elementary kids, which is what I wanted to do. And, making my way through a career that really the entire time I was embodying educator, right? The role of educator. So I can totally identify with that sense of, like, it's this innate thing. It's this sense of calling towards what we feel we are best served to do. So I can fully identify with that. I think probably a lot of the folks that are listening as well, will identify with that. So, so maybe tell us a little more about what you do, and how you show up and serve.
Yeah. So, as you know, there's a few different roads that I travel, and the reason for that is throughout the span of my time on this planet. I've acquired, I feel like I'm like Liam Neeson and Taken. I've acquired certain skill sets that make me a problem for certain people. No. Yeah. But I've acquired skill sets, right? So I was an educator. I started teaching while I was still an undergrad at Berkeley. And so, so I have the lane of educator. I've worked in social change, like activist protest spaces. I've worked in nonprofit spaces. So I've taken all of the experience and all of the skill sets and all of the training and the degrees and, all the fancy things. And I really sat down and I looked at where we all want a solution, right? We wouldn't be screaming from the rooftops in all of our particular lanes, if we didn't think that there was something to change. And so I sat down and I said, what am I uniquely gifted at? What am I really good at? And how does it lend itself to the solution? And so what that grew into was education. So I have a series of courses. I don't like the word coach because of all of the weight of the coaching industry. I prefer guide. My goal is to hold a lantern up as I walk a path with you in your transformational process. So that's why I prefer guide. Coach just feels gross and weighted. I'm
all
like,
kinds of shit wrapped around it that I don't care for.
I'm like, I have a nervous system reaction that I don't care for. So there's education, right? There's transformational, spaces. There's the podcasting, which I think is really important. Social commentary has always been my thing in some way, shape, or form.
Your kindergarten teacher knew it.
Absolutely. So, and the podcasting I think is so important because it becomes a free resource for folks to be able to listen to more nuanced conversations in the privacy of their own home where it can feel, a little safer to kind of take in something that feels foreign. And then there's the third branch or arm, so to speak, which is really like the social impact strategy, equity strategy, community building, doing that with organizations, entrepreneurs. And then, my love for education has never left. So school systems. And then fourth now, I keep forgetting this. I have a foundation, which you helped me with. So.
I mean, tell us more,
Yes.
Tish.
So it is the Doran Family Foundation, but we go by the Asafa Collective. Asafa means a remedy or medicine in Tamazight, which is the language of my tribes people from Northwest Africa.
Yeah.
So it was really important for me to use nomenclature that felt like I'm honoring my ancestry and leaving, that legacy. But effectively, people can go to Asafa Collective to read more, but the TLDR is I really looked at the world and I said, what did I actually need when I was matriculating through school or trying to just figure out how to adult, right? In a world that had not been set up for me. And because of that, not necessarily having generations before me that could guide me or show me things.
Right.
And I've been very lucky to have mentors and working with you, has taught me a lot about everything from wealth systems and, all the things. And so I sat down and I said, we need to be doing more than just giving kids scholarships. Yeah. We need to be providing mental health support. We need to be able to provide clothing and housing and, access to whatever should be considered basic life needs so that kids can matriculate, whether it's through university or trade school or I don't really care, right? You got to figure out a skill set. It doesn't have to be a 4-year, right? We let the kids define success as they see fit. We guide it, but right? But
as we all need.
Right, but providing mentorship and really financial, emotional, spiritual guidance to enable them to just focus on being a student or, again, whatever it is that they're going to go do. So that they can then be a young adult and not only have information and support systems, but also have the unfortunate reality, right, is have the things that this society requires of us to be able to just try to live whole, healthy, balanced lives.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do.
Man, and that's the good work, isn't it? I mean, that's been the biggest joy for me in what we've been fortunate enough to do together, for you to create these entities, right? These bodies for you to be able to kind of take that impact, that positive impact and that guidance that so many people don't have the opportunity to leverage and bring that to bear, right? So that not only are you feeling inspired in the work that you're doing, but you get to also then help other people gain access to that guidance, that mentorship, those resources, and all of those things that are so meaningful and so foundational for us to all really kind of live healthy, productive, inspired lives. Yeah. So that's the thing that's most inspiring about the work that I do is the work that the people that I support are doing. And that's the big difference, right? For me. So
yeah, I couldn't have gotten here without you.
Oh,
I don't know if you know that.
I don't know about that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would have gotten here one way or another, but I will say I couldn't have gotten here as quickly with feeling fully supported and without all the extra like grossness that comes from like the kind of capitalistic machine that we're in without you.
Well, okay, that's a wrap. I think we're done. No.
End of episode. You're welcome.
I appreciate that. I mean, that for me, that kind of response and your perspective around that is I'm honored. Firstly, and also is the source of really inspiration for me because I know that the work that I'm doing is in support of other people leaning into what inspires them and what adds and fills the gaps of meaning and mattering in life. I said it, I've said it a million times. I think I may have said it in the pilot episode, the origin story, but nobody is sitting on their deathbed going, God, I really wish I would have made more money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're sitting, if they're sitting on their deathbed, if they have that moment, right, where they know the end is near and they're sort of reconciling their existence, their lives. It's countless stories, right, of what did my life mean? What did I contribute? Did it matter? Do I matter? Right? The regret and all of those feelings of I wish I would have. That story is so unbelievably common that it's not even really an intriguing narrative.
Yeah.
Right? It loses its power because it's so common. But then we hear somebody like Steve Jobs, right, who is on his deathbed, and he's going, gang, none of that money matters. Right here, right now, none of that money matters. I wish I would have had more time doing family, doing, these other things. So, like, to be able to be a part of other people bringing their genius into the world, doing the thing that they feel so called to do that, like, their kindergarten teacher is like, yo, that's not a surprise at all. I could have told you this is what you'd be doing back then.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, I'm inspired by you, and I am inspired to do the work that we've done together because it really is a part of what I want to be in the world and the change that I want to see in the world. Because you kind of alluded, right, to these things that we've done when we set up the foundation and we did the things, right, and the trusts and all the things. But why that really matters has so much less to do with the wealth than it does with your ability to be able to do the things through your business that inspire you and inspire change for future generations. That's the meaningful part of what we do. And man, I wake up inspired every day to be able to support people in doing what inspires them, which is kind of why we're here, right? Which is why Leave It Better was even born. This podcast is, my sole mission is to shine that light, right? To hold that lantern, as you put it, to show a little for example of how people can do things that make a difference in the world, and they can do that through their business. We don't have a whole lot of for example because a lot of more social entrepreneurs like you and people who are interested in social change or positive social impact or environmental impact, they're running these companies and they're not walking around with a big sign like, look at all the good that we're doing through our business. And more you're seeing that, but they don't want to walk around, look at me, look how good we're doing. So a lot of times for those folks who are interested in that, how do we find an example of like, well, I feel that what you said just made so much sense and I totally feel that way, but how do I go on Monday morning and operationalize that? How do I turn my business toward that direction?
Yeah.
So
it's funny you say that.
Oh,
because I teach that.
Hey.
Because I'm listening to you talk and I think about my own journey, right? Like I have been navigating a journey of, I used to say decolonization, but language, as you know, I'm big on this, like language matters. So instead I say re-indiginization now, right? Because I want to focus on forward progress, right? I want to focus, like I don't say anti-racism anymore or anti-oppression. I'm not anti-anything. I'm forward focused on liberation, right? But so I've been on my own re-indigenization journey forever. And what that meant at the intersection of trying to have a successful, stable, operationalized business that honored those values, that operated from a place, what I call people over profit, right? Where they can both exist, but I'm always centering people, the people I serve, myself, my team. I did not have a blueprint. And I was like, well, I know what the blueprint is for the bro marketing and the standard corporate capitalism. And, I used to work in operations for companies. And so I know how to do that very well. Yeah. And I couldn't wake up or go to sleep at night feeling good about myself because fundamentally my business practices didn't align with my life ethos and what I was claiming to want to bring to the world. And so through a lot of trial and error, and a lot of frustration and a lot of just a lot of hot messness, right? And figuring out what works, what doesn't work. Yeah. And how do we take equitable, humanized business practices, operationalize them, and then still have again, everyone gets to define success as they want, but for me, have success and stability. Yeah. And also the reality is and have financial stability, because I would love for us to go back to the barter system and living off the land. But I mean, unless you're going to go live in a cave and you have a lot of training, good luck. I know I would die within however long it takes to die without food and water. That would be me. Quintessential. Would not survive. Yeah. I'd be like, oh, that's a cute berry. And they're like, you're going to die. That's hemlock or whatever. I would make it.
Oh, death berries.
Right,
those
exactly. Yeah. Hunger Games, I'd be the first to go. I know this, right? Yes. I know my limitations. Anyways, but so I really started thinking about how do I run a successful business and a stable business and a financially stable business and have a financially stable life and leave a legacy and, for kids and family and so on and so forth without feeling either gross about it every single day, like I was participating in the harm, and more importantly, without participating in, grind culture and the hustle and being able to create space for not only for myself, but my team for, rest and peace and quiet and all of those things. Yeah. So obviously I created a 6-month course.
Yeah. Well, naturally.
Well, mostly because people kept saying how are you doing this?
Right.
There aren't models out there. Yeah. And people are like, I'm watching you do this thing and say no to client and say no to companies that are companies, Forbes list Fortune 500 companies and being no. Right. I've put myself in a position to say no to you because your values don't align with mine and you're not willing to really do the work with integrity and one, feel okay about it, 2, have a financial plan just in case I got to keep saying no, right? All of those things. So doing not only the operational work, but the mindset work, the embodiment work to be able to stand in a place of saying I'm very proud of my business. I'm proud of how we operate. My team has been off for 3 weeks.
Amazing.
Through the holidays, I'm they'll message me and I'm like, why are you on Basecamp?
Get away.
I'm going to delete everybody's access till January 1st. What is wrong with you, right?
Put the phone down.
Right. I have to remind them. They're like, oh, because, they come from corporate. So they have that training still in them. And they're like, oh, that's right. I'm not going to get fired. I'm supposed to be doing nothing.
Right.
Yeah. But so I say all of that to say there weren't models. And so because of that, I took all of my years of falling on my butt, and then created a methodology and created a course for folks to be able to navigate that. Yeah. Because there's really not a lot of people. That's not what you see on Instagram, right? The ads, it's make $5 bajillion using this funnel that also doesn't involve consent to people's email. Fun.
Oh, I receive their newsletter at least once a week.
I'm even if you unsubscribe, you still get it. How?
Why am I still getting this?
I didn't even sign up for this.
Oh man, you touch on something that is just such a that's such a friction point for me. Can't we just come to a place where we respect the fact that someone doesn't want our information, doesn't need our information, or isn't interested in getting that information from us? Right? So don't send me a newsletter just because you became a new whatever, insert profession here, real estate agent. But I'm great, I support you in that. But you didn't even say, hey, Brandon, do you mind if I send you my newsletter? Right? Okay. If you had asked me, I'd say, sure, go right ahead. But when your newsletter pops up in my inbox and I'm like, wait, I didn't opt into that. And okay. Anyway, sidetrack.
But you bring up an important point around business, right? Because fundamentally what you're describing is that your personal sovereignty has been like offended. That piece of you inside of you that says, I am a human being and I am autonomous and I should be able to be consented and discussed with in the choices, all of the choices. Yeah. Your access to me is not guaranteed simply because we had a conversation one time.
Right.
That right there, fundamentally, like that's the cornerstone of where most people go wrong in the way that they just engage with other humans or found their business practices on, right? Because they're thinking profit, they're not thinking people.
Right.
Like I have tons of people on my mailing list simply because it starts off with, hey, this is exactly what you're going to get from me.
Right.
You can opt out at any time. You can also choose to like only opt into this kind of information or this kind of information, right? Like,
sure.
It's very clear. If I give you something for free, it's actually free. There's no like bait and switch, like because fundamentally I'm making every decision from that place. It was consent a part of it, and was personal sovereignty honored. Yeah.
It's just so important. And, you know, the balance is, I think, at the core of the kind of the story that you just shared with us, right? Is how can I take all of these different parts of me and my existence that are so, all of them, critically important to me, and achieve a balance that allows me to sleep well at night, to be comfortable and sovereign financially, and be successful, right, in business, in accomplishment and creating revenue and positive impact and helping the people. All of that is really, really hard in the work, especially that you do. So why don't, would you share a little bit of some of those kind of wellness practices that you leverage for yourself to keep that anchor firm in the ground for you? Yeah.
So the first thing that, and I want to put an asterisk on this, like this isn't like you just jump into the business and you're like, I know how to do this, right? Like we are very specifically taught within our social context, most specifically in Western societies, to be fragmented, meaning our intellectual capabilities and our embodied reality are very much not online with each other. We are taught to separate those things, or we are, I should say not taught, we are trained, right? We are socialized to separate those things, because how do you maintain, right, corporate capitalistic participation? Right. You get people to start ignoring their body, because your body will tell you, hey, I'm tired. Hey, you need to have a seat. Like, I know when I used to work in corporate, like there was always the joke of like, people would be like, man, I never get sick, but when I do, I'm out for like a month. Yeah. Because your body's been telling you the whole time, like, you need to have a seat, you need to sleep, you need to drink water, you need to go outside, and you're ignoring it, and then your body's like, oh, word. Okay. Watch.
Let me show you.
Right. Oh, you don't know how to listen? Got it. Right? Like, that's what happens. So I want to be really clear on, like, what I'm going to share is prefaced by having done a lot of my own healing and reconnecting work. Yes. And so these are things that I teach in, right? That's why it is a 6-month course. So, so really important to name that, and that there is work to do prior to 100%. This, right? Yes. But all of that being said, you know, one of the things that I did when I first started to really operationalize my business and create structures was have a very serious come to Beyonce with myself of like, I'm an introvert. Like, as much as people are like, oh, you're so social in this. Yeah, I have social skills. It doesn't mean that my battery doesn't die when I use them, right? Like, people have common misconceptions about introverts. But so I'm an introvert. I actually have to spend a lot of time by myself recharging, or like not peopling is what I call it, right? All of my work is peopling. All of it, right?
Literally all of it.
Whether it's interviewing or holding space for people, holding healing space, educating, all of it. And so I had to sit down. First thing when I started building the business is like, what is my capacity for peopling every single day? How many hours is it? And how is what kind of peopling different, right? So holding a grief circle is different than teaching a workshop. So I had to really get honest with myself and listen and ask my body, like, at what point do you start to feel tense or feel exhausted or feel like you need just space from humans? And I know very clearly, like, I can have 3 one-on-one clients a day, but if I have 3 one-on-one clients today, that means I can only teach 1 workshop on top of that, right? So I had to kind of do that jigsaw puzzle and get very clear, right? What am I available for? What's my capacity for what on any given day?
Yeah.
And then I built that into how I created my calendar and Calendly, right? So that was the first step, is like, how do I protect my nervous system?
Yeah.
Right? So that I'm not inherently just like, I look up, because again, the mistakes you make when you're learning, been there, done that. You look up and you're like, why do I have 4 one-on-one clients and I'm teaching 2 workshops and I'm like, I'm literally talking to people for 9 hours straight and I forgot to schedule a lunch. Oh my God.
Yikes.
Now I hate everyone for 2 weeks, right? Like I don't want to be there. So that was the one of the first things. The next thing was a daily morning practice, which I just called like my little morning check-in. So it's like before I pick up the phone, I have a dog, so actually that's the first thing I do, right? So it's like, let her out, do the dog thing, and then just have like a little moment with myself of like, how did you sleep?
Right.
How do you feel right now in this moment before your brain starts taking in everything from the world? How do you feel? What do you need in this moment or in general before you can feel like peopling or engaging, right? So it's like, what do I need? I always call it like my battery. So it's like, where's my battery at? And what do I need to get my battery to where it needs to be for me to take on the day that I have?
Right.
And I give myself that, and that is scheduled into my morning. And so I realized for myself, one of the things, I don't talk to anyone before 9:30 in the morning. My partner doesn't count.
Right.
But I don't talk to anyone before 9:30, and my team knows, don't schedule a meeting for me.
Right.
With me at all before 10. Now I'm up at 6:45, 7.
Sure.
I'm doing all the things.
Right.
But I can't.
No people.
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not, right? And I've realized, again, it's like, I need to go outside. So again, having a dog helps with this, right? But it's like, I make my coffee, put it in a tumbler. I take her outside. I go for a walk. I spend time in nature, right? Whether it's, if he comes with me, great. Then, we're chatting, whatever. If not, it's like music, podcasts, like really spending the morning with myself.
Yeah.
So that I've tended to I'm a fancy plant, right? So it's like, I tend to myself however I need to. It's sunshine, water, like whatever nutrients I need. Yeah. And then I go about my day. And remember, my day is already built to ensure success for me.
Yep.
And then before I go into like, partner, sister, friend mode at the end of the day or like whatever it is, I have like a little 10 minutes that is built into my schedule to also have like decompress time.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, what do I need to like come back to myself? What I call it coming home to myself. So it's like, what do I need to come home to me? Yeah. I have a full body scan. I do like a check-in. I have, some breath work exercises, different things that I do. Yeah. But it allows me to kind of then close the chapter on like that part of my brain, that part of energying, so to speak. Yeah. So that then I can go and be just Weeze. Like I can just go and put it all to bed and like then have the rest of my day, whatever that might look like.
The common thread between all the things that you just laid out is intentional time. Taking intentional time to check in with your body, because that is the anchor for all of us to this world. It is our body. That is what anchors us. And when we come out of our body and remain in our head or in some future that we're trying to create or some past event that was traumatizing or we regret, or all those things take us out of our body. Yeah. And so what I noticed in what you just shared is that the common thread there is intentional time to check in with what's going on, what you're feeling in your body before you go out and use the resources that your body has and your heart and all the energy that you have needs to be used to go out there and people, especially as an introvert. Doesn't mean you don't like people.
Oh, I love people.
Right. I know this about you. It just means that there's only so much life in that battery for peopling, right? That has to be recharged. And if it's not intentionally focused on or paid attention to, that battery can run on empty for quite some time, and we never show up, right? It's kind of like my iPhone. As that battery has been used for a couple of years and it's like it holds a charge for like an hour and a half, right? Nothing on that phone operates the way it's supposed to because that battery is at the end of its life. It's been run out too many times. So I have to replace that battery, right? So I think a lot of us don't think about our body in such a way, which is probably why, mental health is such an issue for so many of us. Physical health, which is a byproduct in large part to our mental health, is so out of whack. And I mean, all the things that we're experiencing as a result of that. But I absolutely love the intentionality of that practice. And I was just having a conversation this morning, and we were talking about the connection between our growth as a human being in our professional lives and our relationships and all of those tangible things and spirituality. And I say the word spirituality not in the perspective of, Christianity or Judaism or, Muslim faith or whatever religion, but spirituality in the sense of our connection to our bodies and the physical world and the interconnectedness of all of us and all the things. So many of us don't pay attention to that or dismiss it as, sort of hippy dippy mumbo jumbo, which granted, I took that for a long part of my early years in life, right? Which maybe we'll explore in future podcasts, but not in this one. And it really, it strikes me how vastly different it is for a person who doesn't have that connection to their spirituality or the spirituality of existence, right? The interconnectedness of all of us and all the things between them and a person who does have that understanding. Okay, I got to check in and I have to know what's going on with my body and thoughts and all the parts of it to keep me anchored and full of energy to be able to show up the way that I want to, right, in business. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's a place where a lot of us need more, for example.
I'll actually take it one step further for you.
Go for it.
So I've been in business for myself in different iterations for a long time. I'm like, I can't even do the math right now. And my business shifted. I felt more aligned with it, and it became more successful by everybody's global metrics, right? More successful when two things happened. The first is that I made the mindset shift that we're talking about, right? Beyond mindset, I did all the work necessary to be able to accomplish this. But I really did the mindset shift also of looking at my battery, not as how much can I work until I'm depleted and then I need to rest, but instead looking at my battery of I need X amount of time for myself, just for me. I need X amount of, if you're partnered, I need X amount of time to be the partner version of myself. I need X amount of time to be family connected version of myself, friend, chosen family, whoever. And then there's work. And then there's, leave room for impromptu-ness, right? So it's that's at least 5 parts. If a battery is 100%, right? That's what, 20%? Per part if we're doing it equitably. But what we do instead is we say, I've got 80% to work, and hopefully I can shove everything else into that 20. Oh wait, then there's sleep, and actual so making that shift was really important. That's the first thing. And then the other thing, which I'm actually really committed to speaking about really publicly now, considering the last week or so of what's, all the things that have been on the internet. Something that a lot of people don't know about me is that I am clinically diagnosed with PTSD, CPTSD, anxiety, panic disorder, and depression.
Wow.
And I don't not talk about it, right? Because it's there's any shame or anything like that, but because I, for the last few years, instead of masking and running from it and feeding into a very negative narrative, especially for melanated folks of color, especially for women of color, that you just have to be strong and you have to be resilient and you just got to fight through it, right? And it means something about you if you say hey, you know what, I actually can't get out of bed today, or I have to cancel with you because all I can do is get out of bed today and make it through the day, right? So when I shifted my relationship to my own mental health and the realities of what I've been diagnosed with, factored that into how I do my business. And this is a really important one. We think that boundaries are just about the interpersonal relationship between other people.
Right.
But when I started to practice the things that I teach for other folks on the outside, right? Boundaries in business and boundaries between family with myself, that changed everything. And when I did those two things, literally, and this is, I think, when I called you, I was like, my business is doing all the things. I like need help. I don't know where to put the like I was not ready for the influx, but I kid you not. It was like right when I said, I have to now implement all of these things into how I do business and how I not just show up for me, how I show up for my team, for my clients, for my business, and then really operationalize them and standardize them as practices. At like, I couldn't keep up. Yeah, it was like I was like, where are all these people coming from? And like, oh my God, how do you even know who I am? Like, what is happening? Like, total like freak out moment, you know. But now looking back, it's like, oh, well, that makes sense, right? I had built something in the for the outside world to see that fundamentally reflected the way that I was actually caring for myself as a full human being.
Right.
People are attracted to that.
Yeah.
Because they're like, man, I don't know what it is, but I want part of that.
Yep.
You know, so those were really important for me. So I say that to say, if you are somebody that is struggling with any sort of mental health, one, please get support however you need it.
Yes.
And two, I promise you that you can be a successful entrepreneur and just like business person, right? And however you do your business at the intersection of taking care of yourself and really prioritizing your mental health needs.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that, because I just, it's an unfortunate part, one of many, of this sort of societal indoctrination practice, right? Is no. Just don't pay attention to that. You can work through that. It's fine. Your body will rejuvenate. You'll sleep. You'll eat. You'll be fine. But keep going. Just keep going. And then that produces a result that, you know, the DSM diagnoses for you, which magically there's a pill for that. Right. And then that pill then has the side effects that come with it. Right. But don't worry, because we got a pill for that side effect too. So then it's a complete disconnection from our physical and spiritual being to be operating in the construct, right? The societal construct, which only leads to more of the disassociation from our body and our well-being and all of those other things, right? So I'm really appreciating the fact that you bring this part up, because it really is a critical piece. And if we're not careful, it's real easy to just sort of in a general malaise go through each day because there's too much to worry about, there's too much to do. I don't have time to spend on meditation or learning about breath work or doing sort of the work necessary, right, to kind of come out of the fog of these preconceptions and traumas that may have been passed on to us from our parents and future, you know, past generations and all of that, which is a nice segue, because where we met, well, firstly, you were speaking at an event, and I think...
Was that the first place we met?
That was the first place I saw you, was when you were speaking
I was
at...
on a panel, right?
Yes,
yes.
Yeah. I think it was WeWork or something in Oakland.
Yeah.
It was a conscious capitalism event. And you were speaking on that panel, and I was hearing you speak, and I was like, wow.
Thank you.
You said something that made me turn in and go, what the hell did she mean by that? You kept saying, you have to start with the deep work. If you're not doing the work, you don't do the deep work, then you're never going to come out from underneath these preconceptions or these beliefs. And I'm going, yeah, man, I loved the message and everything you said was so empowered. And then I left that event and I was like, damn, what did she mean by deep work? And so I started following you. So I looked for you. I found you on IG, and then I found the podcast, That's Not How That Works, which is amazing. There's so much value packed into that podcast. It's insane. So, for you, the listener, if you're hearing, go check out That's Not How That Works. It's an amazing podcast. And if you were ever curious about how you get out from underneath a lot of this, what's called, colonized sort of mindset, right? That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
And so I started following you, and I'm listening to the podcast, and I'm going, man, that's amazing. And then Instagram, and then here comes, a post about, well, that's not how that works as a program. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And so when I found that, I was like, yes, okay. I understand now what she means by deep work, because it wasn't something that I had ever thought about. I mean, I don't consider myself, never have considered myself to be, racist or biased, which, well, as it turns out, well, that's just impossible. I mean, we all have biases. That's not how that works. So, but I said, you know what? She's right. And here's maybe an aspect that I hadn't really considered, right? That informs the way I view people, or the way I view places, or even my role and place within the world, right? As a cisgendered, white, heterosexual male in America, right? A certain number of seats of privilege and advantage that I sit in, right? Just by purely being born.
Yeah.
And so having gone then into that, I said, all right, this program, I want to do this work, and I want to kind of understand myself better and all of those things. And so going through that program with you as a guide, and you and Trudy, I mean, I learned so much about myself that I hadn't even considered before, that I didn't even think was true or present, and not out of malice, not out of, well, I don't like people that have darker skin than me, or, whatever the case might be, right? But just purely and simply these very kind of like insidious perspectives that are just laid out there, that are really built into, right? So much, as you very well know. I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but
keep going.
I think
really proud right now.
We have the pews as well that are listening, and so I'll share with that. But it fundamentally shifted the way that I was able to show up in the world, purely because I was aware then that a filter was there, that I was bringing all information and experience through. So knowing that that filter was there gave me the ability to step away from that filter, set aside what it brought through, and let everything come, and understand that reference from my perspective, informed by understanding where I came from, what I was born into, and the privilege and sometimes lack thereof for a lot of people. And so it was such a powerful experience that it literally fundamentally shifted the way that I was able to show up in the world. And that's the kind of deep work that is, it sounds maybe simple, but it's not easy. It's difficult work, because we have to kind of look in the mirror and go, oh, maybe I've been saying things that make people feel a certain way without knowing it. Maybe I'm doing things that are making people feel a certain way without me knowing it. So being tuned into those things, and in this sort of cordoned off area, right? This specific area of like my perspectives wasn't, well, I'll say that as I did that work and I unpacked those understandings, beliefs, and experiences that I had, it opened up my perspectives on the way that I showed up in business, the way that I showed up in my relationships, whether it was white folks or people of color, it didn't matter. Those experiences were informing the way that I was showing up and having conversations and what I was perceptive of and aware of, right? And that carried out into all other places, all of my relationships, all the other things. So I'm super grateful that we met the way we did and that I got a chance to learn from you in a way that maybe I wasn't ready for, or I didn't know I was ready for, but that I really, really needed to step into the journey that I had in front of me, which is showing up in an industry that operates a certain way that does not work for me. Mm-hmm. And I was not okay with it. And I constantly felt that friction and I didn't know why. Yeah. So then it gave me the ability to then sort of step outside of that and go, all right, all those things that I've been feeling in my body's been telling me, my brain and my nervous system have been telling me this is not how you want to be showing up. I was able to understand that, decode that, and leverage that learning into growth in business. So that really does a great deal for people to start with that work. To unpack some of the things about themselves, limiting beliefs, maybe sort of biased perspectives and all that kind of stuff. Because if we really want to show up in the world and do good work and be an agent of change, there is no other starting line than right at home. Yep. Because we can't share something we don't have. Mm-hmm. And I think you brought this up, like the coaching thing. Mm-hmm. There's a whole shit ton of coaches out there that are out there trying to share something that they don't have.
Correct.
And which is why I stay away from like money coach. No judgment on people who use that term. I mean, the term itself has sort of, it's starting, or it carries with it a lot of stuff.
Yeah. It's heavy.
Yeah. And so I prefer the word guide too. So when you said that, I was like, man,
duh.
That's my girl right there. Because honestly, like a financial guide is a whole lot different than a financial advisor or a financial coach. I mean, so language matters. I agree with you 100% on that. And now we're just able to go, all right, well, here's somebody, who can help guide me through and along this journey that I want to go on.
Yep.
So I can really appreciate those perspectives. Weeze, where can people find you? If they want to work with you on an individual level, or if they want to find your programs, maybe they want to start at that, that door where it's like a little easy to approach it. You don't got to worry about like who's looking at me and who's judging me and all that. So how can people find you? How can they work with you?
So perfect timing, because I actually just made a whole bunch of shifts. One just for my own capacity, but first and foremost, you can always find me According to Weeze on Instagram. Yeah. accordingtoweeze.com is the website. Basically, if you look up According to Weeze, Weeze, you will find me wherever I exist. Love it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is right now, effective like a week ago, there's all different, kind of scales of accessibility. Not only just access to me, but also financially. So starting at like $5 a month, right? We've already talked about the podcast, which is a free resource. Sure. Outside of that, $5 a month, like basically Patreon style membership. Yeah. You have access to community. It's where I used to do a lot of IG lives, but because of death threats and trolls, I no longer bother. Yeah. Once you're on Fox News and they're coming for you, I'm good. I had to shift how I show up in the world for that reason. But it's where the like educational pop-ups are happening every single kind of educational. There's like 200 videos on there on all sorts of different topics, behind the scenes of podcasts, just tons and tons of education and a community space where you can engage with other folks that are in different parts of their journey, and myself.
Love that.
Like, again, starting at like $5 a month, all the way up to, there's like a book club, and then a higher level where it's like every other month there's office hours, like live in-person coaching accessibility. So that's if you're like, I don't know, or I want to get a feel for her. Like, again, that's where you can start. All of my courses are actually now self-paced. There is an option once you complete them to either do one-on-one or do like a la carte, direct access to me where you can just like book a single call.
Yeah.
But I did that very intentionally because folks are getting really busy because we're quote unquote going back to normal, and so if you're curious, there's everything from, boundary work, protecting your peace, to the culture of whiteness, just a 4-part lecture series, all the way up to for white and white passing folks and then melanated folks, 2 separate programs to really dive into like, what does decolonization look like? What does my liberation or anti-racism, journey look like for myself?
Yeah.
And then on a higher level, one-on-one work, or if you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, a corporation in any kind of way, kind of larger commitment consulting.
Nice.
And then there's Decolonizing Business, which is running right now, but follow me, sign up for the, the mailing list. When I run it again, because that is one I will run live. I have to run that live.
Sure.
That's not one that I can let people do self-paced. That requires a lot of hand-holding.
Yeah.
But so that's also, that'll roll back around in 2023 with a couple of other new fun things that I'm doing.
I love when you say new. I love when you say new.
And then support the foundation.
Yes.
501c3.
Thank
it is
you.
tax exempt.
Yes.
I'm just gonna say, like, give us your money.
How
if
can
you don't
folks
know,
give you the money? Because this is the message.
If you want to do something good in the world, and you're a person that's like, either I don't have the time, maybe you don't have the time, but you have the funds.
Right.
Whether it's time or funds, we are currently, enrolling volunteers. You can fill out a volunteer form. You can also just donate the funds. There is a large conversation right now around don't donate to nonprofits, which typically I agree with, but we are a foundation. We're running it completely differently. These are things that I've already done, and now we just need financial support so we can continue to support these kids and more of them.
Yeah.
So if you're like, hey, I want to do something good in the world, but I don't even know where to start, or I am in a financial position to be able to donate, or I can donate time, go to asafacollective.com or doranfamilyfoundation.com. It'll take you to the same place. Obviously, there's also a link on accordingtoweeze.com.
I imagine there might
everywhere.
Be. How convenient.
It's in my IG bio. And you just either go to donate or volunteer.
Yeah.
Even $1 helps. Tell your friends, tell everyone.
Yes.
I love working directly with people, but this is really the thing that I love the most is really being able to provide spaces, healing, educational, transformational spaces for that next generation of marginalized youth.
Man. Asafa, A-S-A-F-A, asafacollective.com.
Yep.
So even if you can't spell, Google's real good with like going, oh, wait, I think
you
meant.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole different podcast too, right? So we won't go there
right now.
Right. But thank you so much, Weeze, for coming and spending time with me. There is never a time that we spend time together in proximity that I don't walk away feeling like a better equipped human being.
That's deep. Thank
you. You are amazing in the work that you do, because that work is dirty, some of it, real down and dirty. We got to deal with a lot of things. And you hold space so gracefully for people to be able to do that without bending to allow bullshit to roll over. It's calling it how it is in a compassionate and loving way. And the world is better for you being in it. I appreciate you being here with me and spending some time. And I look forward to all the good work that we get to do through that Asafa Collective and the Doran Foundation. So
Me too.
Great to see you. All right, my friend.
All right.
If you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For even more inspiration, head over to our YouTube channel, Leave It Better with Brandon Trammell, and subscribe to watch videos from podcast episodes, gain insights around getting right with your money, finding joy in everyday life, and achieving contentment in a crazy world. And remember, wherever you go, whoever you're with, whatever you do, always aim to leave it better than you found it.